Generally, the characters in the gospel represent who we are as human beings rather well. And Peter does it nicely for today. Because you could picture Peter kind of saying, "Yippee! Sister gave me the gold star because I got the right answer." And then all of a sudden, the right answer comes with a relatively significant price tag. You've claimed that I am the Christ, and you're right, but as the Christ, I'm going to have to suffer, be rejected, be alienated from my own people, die, and then rise. And the implication, of course, is, well, if that's going to happen to the leader, honey, don't you think it's going to happen to me and you? And there's where it gets a little scary. There's where it gets a little odd. When we're honest about why we continue to practice the faith and why we believe, there's a certain level of self-interest and self-gratification that comes. Maybe it's just because we like seeing a group of like-minded people every Sunday, and that makes us feel good, and that supports us in our faith. And maybe it's because when we sing a very particularly stirring hymn, we all well up, like hearing "God Bless America" on 9/11, and it makes us feel proud and part of things. And maybe it's because we just kind of want something out of this. Now, let me give you a very concrete example. On August 15th, 1977, I knelt right there in front of the Vicar Provincial, and I made my vows as a friar. And immediately after, I promised to live in obedience, without anything of my own, and in chastity for the rest of my life. The Vicar Provincial, with my hands in his, looked me straight in the eye and said, "And I, on the part of Almighty God, if you follow all of these things, promise you everlasting life." That's a pretty good carrot to dangle in front of anybody, isn't it? And ultimately, that's the call that we all have. If we follow these things, we will have everlasting life. But it comes with a cost. Now, you and I are all very good consumers. We never pay full sticker price unless we absolutely have to. We're always looking for the CVS 40% off if you're a frequent shopper coupon. We're always looking for the sales. We're always looking for buy one, get one free. We're always looking for these kinds of things because that's who we are, and that's a wise thing to do. Those aren't bad things to do. But at a given point, we have to realize that this is going to come with some suffering, some pain, and some personal self-denial and abnegation. Way back in the 1930s, the German Lutheran theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote a masterful text in which was called "The Cost of Discipleship." And he pointed out that there is such a thing as cheap grace, which is just the good feeling that we get. And in order to keep that good feeling, we go along and get along. And this is the 1930s, in which Hitler was demanding that Christian churches stopped proclaiming the Old Testament because it was a Jewish text and was already sending to the concentration camps baptized Jews. And the official German government church said nothing about it. Dietrich Bonhoeffer did, and wound up getting strangled with a piano wire for his efforts. It's going to cost us just a little bit. James, in the second reading, talks about faith and the works that are below it. And to me, that's a nice distinction between kind of cheap grace and the cost of discipleship. Let me put it this way in kind of simple terms, and then they'll get a little bit more difficult. We all say, by reason of our baptism, that God is God, the maker, the Lord, of heaven and earth, which phrases we'll repeat in the creed in just a few minutes. And that way, essentially what we're saying is that God is the ultimate reason of our existence and the ultimate good of everything. That's our faith. And that requires of us some level of sustained and persistent prayer. And when people come to me in confession, Father, I can't maintain my prayer life, my standard response is, I know of no single person that I've ever met who has a sustained prayer life who did not get up early in the morning and do it first thing before all the cares of the day crowd in and pollute your mind. Oh, Father, I can't get up early like that. Our faith says, believing in God as Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit, that there's an essential oneness even though there is a distinction. And yet, how difficult is it for us to bite our tongue and not get sucked into vitriolic, nasty arguments over masks and vaccinations and politics and sexuality, etc., and etc. But Father, I can't help myself. Bite your tongue just a little bit. Don't get sucked in if you don't have something positive and charitable to say. It costs us a little bit to put good works on our faith in those moments. Now let's take it out into the larger sphere. Our faith tells us that all of life is sacred, which is, of course, why we stand up against abortion. But at the same time, how many of us would really be willing to go out of our way and accompany a pregnant woman in difficult situations with no money and no family support? How many of us would be willing to accompany her for the rest of her life of her child in order to save that child? The cost of discipleship. Our faith tells us that in ordering social society, there's always a delicate balance between individual rights and the common good. How many of us would be willing to give up some of our status, to give up some of our money, to pay a little bit more in taxes for the common good, if it's going to cost us. Show me your faith, and I'll show you the good works that underlie my faith. If the gospel of Jesus Christ were nothing else but cross and deprivation and suffering and negativity, who would follow it? But it's also not all happy clappy, pie in the sky when you die, and roses without thorns. Following Jesus ultimately at a given point means that my life is going to be uncomfortable, painful, and difficult. And unless I accept that fact, in theory now, and in fact when it happens, I can never progress as a follower of Jesus Christ. And yet we sing, "Lift high the cross, the love of Christ proclaim." Each newborn follower was marked with that cross, and it still follows us.